everyone, and welcome to the With Love Nyasha podcast. I'm not sure if you guys heard my paper sliding down, but it's all good. So, some of you may have noticed I did start this podcast last year in 2022, but, life happened. But, Happy New Year, and I do plan on being more consistent, okay? So, today's podcast was inspired by a book I read a few years ago. It is a book that transformed my mindset. It is called The Spirit of Leadership by Myles Munroe. Now, I'm going to quote a page from the book because this particular line, I never forget it. Like when I think about certain stuff, it's there in my mind. And it says, "The Creator is also omniscient or all-knowing. Because we have his nature, we have the facility to understand and retain knowledge. We are capable of learning as much as we want to. Our ability to learn is infinite." Okay, listen. That was from, I think, page 113 of the book. That passage, that particular paragraph, those sentences transformed my mind. Because a few years ago, I used to be like, if I don't know something, I just don't know it. Well, I got the biggest correction of my life when I read this book. Okay, so now the topic for today's podcast, after reading that passage from The Spirit of Leadership, sorry to click my teeth, is what is stopping you from writing that book, creating that content, revealing and sharing that masterpiece you've been working on? What's stopping you? Really? Because I feel like the biggest thing stopping us is usually something we don't know. And I know most of the times when we hear this statement of get knowledge, continue getting understanding, make sure you're getting wisdom, make sure you're speaking to people who have experience in this area. That's very important. But what if the knowledge we lack is about knowledge about ourselves? Just something to think about. Because when we're giving and serving and creating services, right? Whether it is you're working as a writer, or you want to be a future author, or even you are a mother, a parent, a sibling, whatever it is you do, what's stopping you from maximizing that to the fullest potential and giving from a position of abundance? Well, if I can be honest, from my own experience, it's usually been my identity or lack of understanding about my identity, or things I didn't know about myself. That's usually what stopped me from optimizing myself in certain spaces, right? So, if you're a writer, a creator of sorts, because we are all mini creators, I want you to know that the only thing stopping you from writing that book or creating that piece of content or creating whatever vision you see in your mind is information, more specifically knowledge. And that knowledge I'm finding more and more as I continue to grow is knowledge about myself. Yes, don't get me wrong. I'm an entrepreneur too, right? So as I'm running my business, there's some things I may not know that I need to make sure I learn and understand because it will affect me in the long run, right? So I need to make sure I'm getting knowledge about money and understanding how that works, getting knowledge about leadership and how that works. Don't get me wrong, right? I believe that when we were created by design to be leaders. However, you don't just wake up one morning and be like, I'm a leader. Yeah, you may be a leader, but there's certain things you need to cultivate to make sure you're fully actualizing your leadership potential. And that always, I feel, starts with the mind. So if there's a book that you want to release, or you're wanting to write and become a future author, or even just a vision or a piece of content you want to create, get knowledge, because I feel it is very important to know who you are, but most importantly, as you're getting this knowledge, don't hesitate to start, right? If you have expertise in an area, for example, right? Or your clients often ask you, how did you do this? Or there are people in your life who literally ask you, well, how did you do that? I see that, you're gaining a lot of positive influence, energy, or positive things from this thing that you do or that you've done. It seems to be really working for you. You look so much healthier. How did you do that? You can package that into an informational product like a book or something and share that information. Now, whether you decide to charge for it or not, that's up to you. Hopefully you do, but it's not always the focus sometimes. So, what do you not know about yourself that is holding you back? Listen, let me give you an example, okay? I used to work, I was employed a few years ago with a particular organization. And when I had left, I was transitioning from employment to unemployment, right? So I was living off of my last paycheck, and then eventually I had access to my retirement savings, which I then invested elsewhere. And after that, months after that, I found out that I could have had access to employment insurance, EI. Now, does that mean that the employment insurance somehow showed up, that particular program somehow showed up after I learned about it? No. It has always been there. The information was always there. The program was always there. I just didn't know about it. And that's the thing. Sometimes we are I am guilty of this, okay? I'll be looking for information, Google, scrolling through social media, trying to find all this information. But really, it's about positioning yourself to be around even people who may have the very information you're looking for, right? Like that experience with knowing that I had access to a program, but I didn't know I had access to it, but a few months later, I learned that I could have had access to that program because when I called them, they said, you usually only have X amount of months to apply after you leave an organization. Why didn't you apply? And my response was, I didn't know this was an option for me. But me not knowing, my ignorance is still not an excuse because I could have known, or I could have positioned myself to be in a space to understand this information. Because I'm pretty sure the resources were there at my old employment. But I just didn't, want to learn, if I can be honest. I had this mindset that, I'll be fine. I'll always be able to make money somehow. I'll always be able to find a job. You know what I mean? My mindset wasn't in that space. And then months later, funny enough, how I found about it was my sister messaged me and told me to apply for it. But I was like, no, I'll be fine. I'll just keep looking for work. I'm going to just, start working on my entrepreneurship while also maybe working on the side. No. And then I dismissed her information because, again, my mindset was, I don't need that. I didn't know this information, but I don't need that. But eventually, after her pushing, I did. And they asked, why didn't you apply earlier? So I say all that to say what you don't know is usually your biggest hindrance. And the biggest hindrance in that category of not knowing is self-awareness and knowledge about yourself. Right. So I want to encourage you. This podcast, I didn't plan on it being super long, but I just want to encourage you. Whatever it is that you want to release, whether it's vision, a piece of content, or even a book, work on it, create it, and eventually release it. Now, here's the caveat. Here's like the little sub thing I'm going to say about this. Because I did this. I've done this before. Okay. I've done this where I'll create a piece of content, and after it's ready to go, I become extremely anxious and then start getting scared. And then I start going into a mode where I'm like, okay, I need to edit this a bit more. Oh, it's not ready. I edited it one time. I noticed a mistake. I need to make sure it's perfect. Don't do that. You can edit it yourself. You can even have someone else proofread it. But don't allow fear to lie to you and tell you that it is dangerous to release this book, because fear is there for a reason. Fear usually helps you like discern like, oh, this might be a dangerous environment. But what is so dangerous? If you become fearful when you're about to release a piece of content or a product, what are you really afraid of? Is there an immediate danger? No, there isn't. Your life isn't on the line. You're not at risk. You're fine. So if fear shows up, it's a lie, because the lie tries to convince you that it's not ready. It's not perfect. I shouldn't release this piece of content. I shouldn't release this book because it's not ready. And you now find yourself constantly editing and editing to a point you may even edit gems out of your product. So I'm saying all of this to essentially tell you, once you've made a few edits, have someone else proofread and edit it for you. But when it's ready and it's been proofread and edited, release it. Because the beautiful thing about releasing things are there's always room for improvement. There's always room to make adjustments and additions, because your life is an evolving story. I can guarantee you are not the same person you were yesterday or even last year, because your life is always evolving and growing. That means you're likely going to have something else that you're going to learn along the way that you will want to add to the book in the future. And that's okay. That's why when you find books that have been on the shelves, that have been selling really well, and then years later, you see that it says expanded edition or second edition or revised edition. It's because these people released information that has been so impactful. But as they've been speaking about it, sharing about it, talking about it, they're finding that there's more they can add to create clarity or just to help the audience further based on information they're learning. So when you release something, don't allow yourself to look at it from the perspective of this is the end. If I release this is it. I can't change anything. No, there's always room for change. So don't allow yourself to stop yourself out of fear from releasing a book, a piece of content, a vision, or whatever it is that you desire to release to the world. Don't allow fear to stop you. Remember, the reason we create things is to serve others, serve the world, and make a positive impact. And the thing is, if you're not able to serve the world, serve the people around you right now. Because as much as we want to serve the world, what about the people around you? What about the people who are wanting the information you have? Right? So that's all I wanted to share with you guys. I hope all of that made sense. And I hope you have a wonderful day. And yes, y'all, I'm going to become more consistent with this podcast. Watch me, guys. Just watch, okay? Every week, there will be a podcast released, okay? And if there are any delays in the week, you will know about it. But you will get a podcast that week. Okay. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon. Okay. Bye.